morning. So here we go, and we are going to do kind of a tutorial to learn how to put root color on somebody's roots. So what I first start with is I part it off into quadrants. It does not have to be perfect, but know that the cleaner your lines are, the easier the application will be. So what I do, I just I go from the top of the head to the center behind the ear, cut through with a brush, and I just twist, and I take and I pin the hair. And then I come over and I do it on the other side. To the ear is my part. And then I take, so I usually use four of my clips. And I then just part off. So a lot of times when I start my first quadrant with color, I always start in the front. The biggest reason why you start in the front is, for any reason, if you run out of product, you've got the front covered. The front also is the most resistant to gray, so it'll take longer for it to process, so it's on the hair longer. So you're always gonna start with the front, and for any reason, if you had to mix up or you ran out of product, guess what? It's not in the front, which is really beneficial. So what I do is I mix. At this point, I grab my gloves, and so what I like to do after I've clipped it off is I take my clip on the opposite side and I put some tension on it, because a lot of times the hair puffs, and I'm gonna start over here, and I want the tension, especially with gals with bangs, you wanna make sure that you have the tension so that when you're working, you can work clean and you don't have the hair coming up. So sometimes I'll even take, if they have bangs, I'll just kind of take the clips, because I don't need the front clip any longer, and I go like that so that I basically have it as flush and flat as possible as I work. So what you do, and don't be afraid, you really can't mess this up. You start with putting product on your brush, and you just really try to focus on the new growth. If you touch the other color, or excuse me, the old existing color, don't be too afraid, because when you are done, you're gonna just kind of blend it in. So I start with my part and I just put it on, and I then start at a diagonal. Remember that diagonals blend, so diagonals are your best friend. So what I do is I go in and I try to work in about a 1/4 inch parting. And again, you may be like, oh, I'm using too much product, I'm not using enough product. Guess what? That's okay. It's your first time, and you're not gonna mess anything up. We're just gonna work, and you're gonna be a little slower because this isn't something that you do all the time. That's okay. That's why we're starting in the front quadrants, and the front quadrants are the most resistant, so they need to be on longer. While I'm working through, and I'm putting the most product at the root and then feathering maybe a little bit over the existing color. So this is where I want you to see where we're working around the temples. The temples are the most resistant areas. So you want to have a nice clean, if you watch me, I just dip my brush and I have most of my product on one side. Well, I guess there's both sides, but you're really wanting to take and do a diagonal still. And I'm pulling with a little tension. And I'm really placing that product. I did 2 swipes. You don't want to keep swiping over it because you lose the product. So you just want to take it at a diagonal. I'm using tension and swipe. And really the biggest tip after we're done that I notice, we have hair that is basically, the texture is more coarse, so it sticks out of the color. So right now it's not saturated in the color, so I put a little more product on those problem areas, And then what I do is I take my little perm pads and I place it. And what this does is it keeps those resistant little hairs and it pushes them down into the color, and it will take her color better. So now I worked in quadrant 1, the front quadrant. Now I'm going to work in the next front quadrant, quadrant 2. And so what I want to do is, again, put tension on the quadrants that I'm not going to be working in right now, so that I keep it as clean as possible. The cleaner you are, the easier this is going to be for you. So now my quadrant, I'm going to start again, and I'm going to start right here. And I'm just going to take an outline my first quadrant. And it's okay to put it on the back quadrant because I have tension and I'm just feathering it in. So now I'm starting at the top at a diagonal. So it looks kind of like a little small triangle. Again, a 1/4 inch section. And what that's going to do is you want to be able to almost still see through it so that you know your saturation is good. You're going to be a little heavier on product your first time, most likely. That's okay. You're just going to work in those first 2. And if you run out of product, guess what? It's in the back of your head. It will work. So now that I have the 2 front quadrants done, don't be afraid to just kind of look at them and feather in. What I do is just kind of look at the top, and I may just pull a little bit of that color down right now just so that it helps the line. You don't have to, but it's an option. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in the back. Now we are working in the back 4 quadrants. And honestly, it's just as we did in the front. I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to just kind of outline out my quadrant. I have tension on this side so that the hair is staying on its side that I would like it to. And I'm just working down that center part. And again, I'm going to start at the top in a little triangle. And I'm just going to start with my 1/4 inch parts. And at this point, you're probably going to be finding your rhythm, and you're going to see that, oh, I can just work a little quicker back here. You just basically do the exact same as you did in the front. So I want you to see what I'm doing in the back. The back of the head, you know, it starts curving. So what I like to do is just go like this, still kind of at my diagonal. If it starts going more horizontal, don't worry about it. But a lot of times I just dip my brush, and to keep it as clean as possible, I don't paint this side because it's pushing it down. I tend to flip the hair and I press up. So what this does is it keeps it, and if you watch me, I just dip my brush twice. So I go a little heavier, and I really focus on trying to keep my area as clean as possible so that it stays off of your back and off of your neck. Do you see how I got a little bit of product a little further down? That's okay. Brush it up a tiny bit. It will blend in. Again, you're getting more of a precise color from myself. So I'm formulating for it to match. Okay, so when we're talking about the very end of this, we just want to make sure that you don't need to add a whole lot of product past the hairline. You can brush these in and they'll blend in. So a lot of times with the baby hairs that come down, I like to just, whatever's left on my brush, just lightly brush them in. So you're going to be heavier with your product up in here, but down in here be a little lighter so that honestly it's to keep you clean. Those are going to blend in and it'll be easier to wash. And when you're wearing this around for 45 minutes at home, you want to be as clean as possible. So much lighter down in this area with your product. Okay, we are done with our first, second, and third quadrants. Moving on to our very last one. Again, you're just going to start at the top and you're just going to work down that part. A lot of times you might worry that you're like, oh my goodness, I still kind of see, am I pulling it down far enough or am I pulling it down too far? You really just want to butt it up to the other color. And then as you're working, it's just going to feather its way through. All right, so I'm just getting to the very end where I'm finishing up. I'm putting decent saturation on these baby hairs, or excuse me, on the back hairs, and now all these last little baby hairs, I'm just kind of brushing them up. Feathering it in, not adding more product, just honestly pushing them into the existing product. So now at this point, all I'm gonna do is pull the hair back in its spot. And because we're at the house, I want to protect my client's house from getting product on it. So I will put a cap on her hair and we'll time it for 35 minutes and then just wash it on out. One thing I want to let you know is if this is too much and this overwhelms you, you don't have the support of somebody to apply your color, let me know. We can always do a bottle and brush. The most important area is the front of your hair and maybe this back section. You don't have to be perfect, but the biggest goal is to keep it on the root area and not really add it to the ends, because her end color is a lot different than her root color, and there's not as much predictability if you decide to throw the color all over. So my suggestion, do your best to just keep it on your new growth, your new roots. And if you're a little worried, brush it in. And if you want to try a bottle and brush and you don't have the support to do it this organized, just let me know.